Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I thought I would chat with you guys a little bit about why I train the way that I train. And it's not to say that other training styles and other elements don't have their place, and it's not to say that a lot of where I'm at right now in terms of strength did not come from incorporating metabolic conditioning and GPP work and speed work and even other rep ranges and things. But a lot of that comes down to what I would call base building. Right, it comes down to base building instead of specificity. And for me, when I say specificity of training, I'm not even talking about specificity with a given lift, because people note that I do a lot of maxing on mostly variations. Right, I don't necessarily max out with the specific squat, bench, deadlift exactly with that bar, with straight weight. I do more variations of max lifts than I do the actual classic lifts. But that's how I train. Generally, my training sessions these days start with a 1 rep max lift, either to a training max or an all-out max or even a missed attempt, followed by high volume hypertrophy training. Now, when I say hypertrophy training, I don't mean that there's a hypertrophy rep range. I mean that per unit of training, higher reps get us the most hypertrophy with the least number of sets. And I do a lot of volume on them. It's not uncommon for me to do 20 sets after a max lift. And it's not like I'm really taking many days off. Right? I don't always take days off. A lot of my training sometimes goes 7 days a week like that. So people would say, so why? What does that come down to? Well, it comes down to specificity of training for an advanced lifter. Now, I built a lot of speed, a lot of explosiveness, things like that using speed work. I built my work capacity using GPP, but let's look at all that. When you're running a conjugate type method like that, that is basically all around training to be a good athlete, right? If you're running a 4-day-a-week conjugate with 2 max days, 2 speed days, plus hypertrophy work thrown in, and you're doing GPP on off days, that's training you to be a good all-around athlete, right? If you just want to be generally good and strong and fast, in condition, that is a phenomenal way to train. Phenomenal way to build your base. But these days, what I'm doing after that comes down to what we know about all the research on advanced lifters. The only 2 things that make advanced lifters get better at 1 rep maxes, the only 2 things, once your base is built, is pure muscle size on your frame and practicing maxes. And when I say practicing maxes, I mean you need to get above 90% of your 1 rep max. Okay, and when I say that, I don't mean even on the classic lift. You need to max out on different things. All right, I max out on over 20 different exercises. And we take them to a max. Why? Because maxing hits your highest threshold fibers. It teaches you how to strain. It teaches you the intramuscular coordination required to lift a truly heavy weight. In other words, it helps you maximize the potential of the muscle mass that you have. And when we state all of that, we're not talking about some genetic freak or genetic outlier. If you were one of those people, you would already know it. Okay, when people say, well, this guy at this body weight or whatever lifts this phenomenal amount of weight on a lift. Well, do you do it? Do any of your clients do it? Then you don't need to worry about that. That's completely irrelevant to your results or anyone you are coaching or training or lifting with. Completely irrelevant. Has no relevancy to the real world other than those few genetic freak outliers. For everybody else in the entire freaking world, other than that tiny 1 in a million person, hypertrophy is going to determine 90% of your strength potential. Learning to max is going to be the rest. Okay, that's it. So in my case, I've already built all the work capacity and stuff, so I choose to do this approach. Is it simpler? Yes. And that's the interesting thing. This form of training isn't particularly complicated. There's no real periodization. Do I use periodization for my clients? You bet I do, because of where they are in their training. Okay, of course we use periodization for them of different types, but in my case, All I'm concerned with is maxing out, and then everything else is basically training very similar to the way a bodybuilder thinks. Not in the sense of, hey, I want to get ripped or I want to work on my beautiful bicep peaks, but what do bodybuilders focus on? What do I need to bring up? Where do I need to add muscle? And so my training is geared around, okay, this is what I hit on this big lift. Where are my weakest links? Let me hypertrophy those into the ground. And training volume, and obviously tension matters, is where we get our hypertrophy. But we also have to look at what are you getting per set. When we start going to real low reps, you have to do more total sets to get the same hypertrophy. And then people will argue, rightly so, okay, if you're not doing heavy singles, the tension is going to matter a lot more on what you're doing for your volume. It will matter more because you're going to get more strength out of doing a bunch of 3s and a bunch of 5s than you will from doing 10s or 12s. There's no argument there because that's your primary training stimulus, and you only get stronger as far as intramuscular coordination by the weight on the bar. But when we're doing maxes first, we're already fatiguing those upper threshold fibers. We're getting more out of learning how to use a heavy weight than we do out of a 3 or a 5 even. We're already getting a better response for the goal of that. So at that point, it just makes sense to go over and say, okay, I'm going to just do lots of volume to hypertrophy the muscles. Do we just say it's only volume? No, we look at our 10s, our 15s, our 20s, and we say, can I progress on this over time? Hey, can I progress on this over time? You know, if you can do 135 pounds for 10 on the standing press, you need to get to 145 pounds, right? But I use these different movements purely to hypertrophy all the weak links, and that's why I've continued to get stronger into my 40s. That's why it's still moving forward, because it's all very, very specific. It's all specific. We max out. We do general hypertrophy training. Obviously, we want everything to grow to some extent, right? Including your biceps, including your side delts. You want everything to grow, but with a heavier focus on the weakest links. Okay, if your hamstrings are the weak link in one of your max lifts, you do more hamstring work. If your triceps are your weakest link and you're pressing, you do more tricep work. Okay, and what I do is that I pick hypertrophy exercises that are easy to recover from. It's not even the case of saying, okay, let me just do a bunch of volume. We look at what exercises can I recover from volume on easiest. In other words, if I could only get away with doing 8 sets of this one exercise and recover from it every week, that's probably not the best choice. I need to pick an exercise that I could do 15 sets of every week that are close to limit sets and still recover. Okay, we look at stimulus to fatigue. So it is thinking in terms of not how much weight can I lift on this exercise, but how much training volume, how much muscle growth can I stimulate and still recover from it. And that addresses the weak links. So the entire philosophy shifts. We go from, hey, what's a big exercise that I can move a ton of weight with and get as many muscles involved as possible? What's an exercise I can check my different strength curves on for a maximum weight? Right? That's how the max work is handled. Very traditional conjugate method, West Side method. And then after that, the entire philosophy shifts for the other part of the workout. It becomes, okay, how can I stimulate as much muscle growth as possible and do so in a way that I can recover from, so that we can do more training with more volume more often to get the most growth. So the exercise selection is actually completely different. We use an exact opposite philosophy. Instead of, hey, what's a big movement we can use the most muscles, lift the most weight on? Because we don't care about recovery off of our max lifts. We don't think in those terms because we're not doing enough volume for it to matter. And then shift and do a lot of exercises that are 10s, 15s, 20s. Because it becomes about volume. It becomes about stimulus. And in a lot of that way, it's what some of the guys out there are saying, who are experts, who are strong and do have some strong clients. Hey, a lot of strength athletes probably need to train in a lot of ways with a bodybuilder mindset. And again, it's not towards, can I look beautiful? It's, hey, how can I stimulate the most muscle growth? because that's what's going to give you the strength potential on those maxes. You need to do maxes to learn to lift heavy, to get strong, to maximize your strength potential, but you build the strength potential off the hypertrophy, and you have to have a different mindset. So it's basically just two training styles combined for specificity of training. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.